All right, Jack, how we doing? I think I had a little mix up there going in with our intro today, but I'll get that down uh, tomorrow for sure.
I
So
thought I got cut off.
no. I cut us off there, Jack, as far as with the intro went. But anyway, I'm
You
learning.
have people
That's right.
listening, right? You didn't cut them off.
No, I didn't cut them
The
off.
whole show just talking to you. No,
I know. I wouldn't want. Well, I love talking to Jack, but I love sharing the show too. So, good morning and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show every Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10, live on Facebook. You can find us at MacMan62. That'll bring you to the Mac Sports page, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Please like and share and subscribe where you can. You can comment on the live broadcast if you go to the Mac Sports Facebook page at MacMan62 and like the page. I and Jack love audience participation. Check out my personal Twitter page at MacManMcGrath. I'm Mac with my co-host Jack Hirsch, the legendary boxing writer, former president of the National Boxing Writers Association, and one of the most knowledgeable men in sports I've ever met. How you doing today, Jack?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mac?
I'm hanging right in there. I mean, it's been a interesting 2 days so far, and me learning the board is going to make it probably more interesting for the rest of the week. So, listen, I'd like to get to the sports and updates first. In NBA, the championship, the Lakers won 124-114. LeBron James had a great game. So did Anthony Davis. LeBron having 33 points. Anthony Davis having 32 as the Lakers go up 2-0 against the Heat. Davis had 14 rebounds, and LeBron James almost gets a triple-double with 9 rebounds and 9 assists. Rondo had 10 assists to go along with his 16 points. For the Heat, Jimmy Butler had 25 points, 13 assists, and 8 rebounds, so he just missed a triple-double too. Also, but the Lakers at this point, they're having their way with the Heat, Jack. You know what I mean? So,
well, the next game obviously is so important because if the Lakers win, the narrative changes. Everyone knows it's all over if they go up 3-0. Miami's not coming back, and they know it as well. If the Lakers go up 3-0, then the talk's going to be who should be the MVP of the series, Anthony Davis or LeBron James. So for game 4, the focus is going to be on the two of them, what type of numbers they put up, who plays a better game. And that's what the hot debate's going to be. Who should be the real MVP? And don't kid yourself, it's extra important this year because LeBron James, if he wins the MVP, he makes history. The only NBA player ever to be an NBA Finals 3-time MVP with 3 different teams.
right.
3 different teams, the only man in history. And if Anthony Davis wins it, he denies LeBron James that history-making achievement.
Right,
so it's
right.
going to kind of be fun. But listen, LeBron James will be happy for Anthony Davis as long, as they win. So I don't want to make it out into a selfish thing. But if the Heat should win, we still got a series.
That's true. That's true. And I think really with their center being out, I mean, they're just not big enough to me, Jack. I mean, I don't think that they're big enough to stay with these two big athletes that are athletes. They're not just big guys that'll post you up. They can go outside and shoot. They handle the ball pretty well. I mean, it's LeBron handles the ball excellent, really. And I mean, I don't think that the Heat have the team to the all-around members, just the injuries alone. And I don't even think if they were in there that they would match up with the Lakers too well. They're just too athletic and too big for them, I think.
But what they do have going for them, the Heat, and it shouldn't be underestimated, they have a ton of pride. You could say that about any team that's gotten to this point, but especially them. They're not going to give up. They're not going
Yeah.
to give up at any point. And once again, if they win the next game, you never know what could happen if you prolong a series. I mean, LeBron or Davis could twist an ankle, and all of a sudden the narrative changes.
That's very
Yesterday's game, the beginning of the game, which no one talks about, Dwight Howard looked like his old self.
yeah.
Was scoring, grabbing rebounds, was running up and down the court, was showing enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And when you have a weapon like that, who's, who played only 17 minutes the whole game, who you can put in for a lot more minutes, it says something for the Laker, depth that they have, over the Heat at this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. In the MLB, Jack, the Padres advanced to the next round, beating the Marlins 4-0. Mitch Moreland went 2 for 4. Jake Cronenworth, the second baseman, went 3 for 4, scored twice, drove in a run, and first baseman Eric Hosmer went 1 for 3, driving in 2 runs. San Diego used 9 different pitchers, pitching out, about 1 inning apiece to shut down the Cardinals' offense, and the Cardinals only had 3 hits. So, I mean, the Padres right now is the story to me of the MLB. They're going to be matched up with the Dodgers, who are the machine. I mean, they're the ones that are supposed to go to the World Series, are the favorites, and San Diego's like that underdog fun bunch that are going up there and a younger team, not as many superstars on that team, at least not as many free agent superstars on that team. So this is what I wanted to see, and we're going to get to see it, the Dodgers and the Padres, Jeff.
I mean, the Dodgers should win the series. I mean, they should, but it's only best of 5. They're not playing the course of a whole season in which a team could absolutely show their superiority. But when you could throw Machado, Tatis, at bat against the Dodgers staff, I mean, you have a real shot. And there was a point earlier in the year where San Diego was playing so well. They were actually every bit as good as the Dodgers for a certain segment of the year. And, let's see what happens here. I mean, St. Louis gave them a real scare, though, winning game 1. And it was scoreless, well into yesterday's game before San Diego finally took over.
Yeah, and the Florida Yankees, the Florida Marlins advanced to play the Braves, beating the Cubs 2-0.
Miami Marlins.
Yes, sir, the Miami Marlins. There you go. Anyway,
Who cares? Same thing.
At least Miami's in Florida, Jack. So at least I'm in the right state. So anyway, they beat the Cubs 2-0. With only 4 hits. First baseman Garrett Cooper and Syria Daving, they drove into 2 runs. The Marlins used 5 pitchers to shut out the Cubs. The Marlins are owned by Derek Jeter, managed by Don Mattingly, with pitching coach Stottlemyre and the batting instructor Jose Posada. And I think they've surprised everyone this year.
Absolutely. And I'll say something. I mean, San Diego is more likely, the Padres are more likely to beat the Dodgers than the Marlins are to beat the Atlanta Braves.
Right.
There's something about this Marlin team, they are fun. And they're playing like they're having fun. I mean, I hate when people use the term loosey-goosey, nothing to lose. To me, losers talk like that. When you say you have nothing to lose, you're a real loser, okay?
Yeah,
That's the way I look at it. I don't go for that nonsense, and so on. And to say, but in the case of the Marlins, in a certain sense, they're playing with house money. They really can't lose at this point, because even if they get swept in 3 games by the Braves, it's a heck of a season. It's a Cinderella season.
Yeah.
And let's see how far they could take it. I mean, let's say they can beat Atlanta, okay, over there. And, who knows what could happen. I mean, but they're playing like they're having so much fun out there, and their young players are developing. But you wonder, is it a little bit of an aberration with the shortened season going 31-29, and then winning a couple of games here in the playoffs? I mean, we won't know until next year. But I mean, they're really, as far as I'm concerned, they're the story of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean,
Now,
if you think about it, Jack, and when the Yankees started winning those World Series in the '90s, I mean, who did they beat? They beat the best pitching staff in the league, the Atlanta Braves. And I don't know if this is karma or if this is something that, with Derek Jeter being there, Stottlemyre being there, Posada being the hitting coach, maybe there's something to it. Maybe they go down there and maybe they do beat the Braves. We'll see. I mean,
the Braves played them late in the season and swept them, and Miami needed to win those games.
Yeah.
Okay, the Braves are a better team.
Yes.
I mean, I don't expect Miami to win that series. I mean, maybe Miami will win a game, lose it 3-1. But we'll see. We'll see what'll happen. I mean, like the Marlins are saying, no one expected us to be here. And at the end of yesterday's game, when they beat the Cubs, the guys on the Marlin team were actually laughing. I mean, not at the Cubs. They were laughing, just saying, isn't this crazy? Look at what we're doing. I mean, and it gets to a point where a young team maybe starts believing. We might look at them as underdogs, but at this point, they might not be looking at themselves as underdogs. They might be thinking to themselves, we just might be the best team in baseball. And if you have that self-belief, who knows what could really happen. But, these Cinderella stories do come to an end. And I kind of, unless we're talking about the 69 Mets.
Right.
But I can't see them getting by Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta seems primed and so on. But we'll see. It's a lot of fun watching the Marlins.
Oh, definitely. And I would be remiss to not bring up St. Louis All-Star Hall of Fame World Series pitcher Bob Gibson passed. I know, Jack, that you've talked about Bob Gibson to me before, and he was a great pitcher. And it's a shame that we all have to pass away eventually. But when if you love sports and you follow baseball, Bob Gibson was one of the greatest.
Let me tell you something. When people talk about the greatest competitor, whoever played in sports, in any sport, they normally think of Michael Jordan. Oh, he's the ultimate competitor. There hasn't been a competitor ever as great as Michael Jordan. Nonsense. In all due respect to Jordan, the ultimate competitor was Bob Gibson. Let me tell you what a great competitor Bob Gibson was. He hated to play all-star games. He hated it because then he'd have to talk to the players on his team who he opposed during the year. He didn't even want to get to know them. He didn't even talk to the guys on his team at the all-star game when he went there. That's the type of competitor he was. If you looked at Bob Gibson the wrong way, he would knock you down, okay? Now, Bob Gibson was a World Series MVP in 1964 and 1967. He was a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, 9-time Golden Glove winner. But Bob Gibson, what a player he was. When he won the Cy Young Award in 1970 for the St. Louis Cardinals, Bob Gibson had to hit as well. They had no designated hitters that day. He hit 303.
Wow.
303 as a pitcher. Can you imagine that? The Cardinals could have used Bob Gibson as a pinch hitter. Better yet, they could have found a position for him on the field, and you're talking about a 300 hitter. Okay. Bob Gibson in the 1968 season, was phenomenal. A 1.12 ERA, 13 shutouts that year. They talk about changing the rules of basketball because of Wilt Chamberlain, okay? Lowering what they were doing with the basket with him, what they're doing in the paint and all. But because of Bob Gibson, they lowered the mound from 15 inches to 10 inches because Bob Gibson was so intimidating. Hank Aaron used to give advice to opposing players. Never make eye contact with Bob Gibson. If you hit a home run off Bob Gibson, don't run the bases too quick or too slow. And if you want to celebrate, go into the tunnel. You better not let him see you do that. Bob Gibson would chase Tim McCarver from the mound. Tim McCarver would come out to check on Gibson. Gibson would point to him angrily and said, "Get back, behind the plate." McCarver would scamp over there. I mean, he knocked down batters on a regular basis, and that's not a good thing to me because it's dangerous. But the intimidation factor with Bob Gibson, I mean, they said Roger Clemens was obviously intimidating, but he had nothing on Bob Gibson, believe me. I mean, guys would be hitting the deck sometimes, and Bob Gibson would go into his windup. They wouldn't dare crowd the plate with Bob Gibson. From 1963 to 1972, he averaged 19 wins. I mean, game one of the 1968 World Series, he struck out 17.
Yeah.
Broke Sandy Koufax's record. And, Curt Flood unfortunately slipped on the ball, hit to the outfield. And Gibson lost that, seventh game of the World Series. But second man to ever get to 3,000 strikeouts. I don't know whether I just said that. But Joe Torre, when he became manager of the Atlanta Braves, he brought Bob Gibson on as his pitching coach because less for what Bob Gibson could impart pitching-wise, but more so for the attitude, because he wanted the players to adopt Bob Gibson's attitude, and he wanted that to rub off on the players. As an athlete, Bob Gibson, listen, the guy could have maybe played in the NBA. He played for the Harlem Globetrotters.
That's true.
It wasn't for baseball. I mean, Bob Gibson could have had a professional career in basketball. That's how talented he was. And just, just so dominant, so dominant, so intimidating, but so admired by his teammates. I mean, his teammates loved him and so on. And the ultimate competitor was Bob Gibson.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with everything you said there, Jack. When you actually change the pitching mound because of how dominant you are, and I kind of remember when that happened, and I mean, this man at that time, for that short a span, I mean, you could put Sandy Koufax right in there with him too, but for that short a time, I mean, he was the best pitcher there was at that time in his career.
Well, I'm going to tell you that mindset in Major League Baseball was a lot different then in regards to pitchers compared to today. Because I remember Game 7 of the 1964 World Series when the Cardinals beat the Yankees. Ninth inning started. Bob Gibson was exhausted. I don't remember what his pitch count was. They didn't advertise it so readily. Today, you look on the screen, they're showing you the pitch count, one pitch after the other. Then they didn't do it. The mentality then was starting pitchers never wanted to be taken out of the game. And if they were taken out of the game, it would be thought of a negative, that someone had to save them, not save the game. So Bob Gibson is exhausted. There's one out in the ninth inning. And one of the Yankee hitters hit a homer. I think it was Phil Linz. Then he got the second out, and someone else hit a homer on the Yankees. Now it's 7-5. And Gibson is exhausted. Now, in this day and age, St. Louis would have went into the bullpen and had taken him out. But when Gibson pitched in that time, pitchers really had to gut it out. And he would always gut it out, late in the game, to get the complete games, and so on. And, when you think of Gibson's legacy, unfortunately, in a certain sense, he came along the same time. Well, the first part of his peak years were when Sandy Koufax was in his peak. And Sandy Koufax is generally considered at his very best to be the greatest pitcher of all time, even though you can make an argument for other guys if you want to be fair about it. But after Sandy Koufax retired, Gibson had, some of his real peak years, but the Sandy Koufax effect still lingered.
Sure.
When someone stakes a claim for being the greatest of all time, it's so difficult to unseat them. For example, take MJ in basketball. Who's going to come afterwards who we're going to allow to unseat him so readily? Jim Brown is a running back. It's very hard for us to ever say there'll be a greater running back than Jim Brown or a greater hockey player than Wayne Gretzky. Okay.
Sure, and it's all objective anyway, Jack. It's all boils down to opinion. You can give stats to support almost any argument, and you will make a valid argument. And when you get down to that, it really comes down to your opinion, how you feel about the guy, what supports that opinion. And I mean, you can almost, if you put a certain group of players in any sport together that are among the greatest, there's different reasons why you consider them great as suppose why I would consider them great, and that's what makes fun when you do compare them. But it's really hard to do, especially when you compare somebody to this day and age to somebody that day and age, because everything was different, from the training to people working plus playing sports, to the facilities, to the fields, to the how the ballparks and stadiums are structured. I mean, there are so many different things today than there was back then. And the argument that people back then couldn't play today or today is, to me, is almost invalid, because it's not the same situation that it was back then. And there's a lot of examples of that. I could go into that forever. But again, when you're comparing somebody like Gibson to somebody like to one of the better pitchers today, whether you want to go with DeGrom or Cole or whoever, it's so hard to compare, because Bob Gibson didn't have the training, the film to study, didn't have the same kind of field conditions these guys do, and he wasn't held to the pitch count these guys are held to today. So it's almost hard to say that a DeGrom would be, even after his career is over, even if he does great along the line and wins some any kind of awards, it really doesn't matter. But to compare somebody like DeGrom, I'm just using that as an example, to a Gibson, is almost impossible because of the way the game has changed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you to an extent on that, Mac, but no apologies need be given for Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson could throw really, really hard. They didn't have the radar gun going
Right,
when he
right.
pitched, so we didn't know how fast he was exactly pitching. But Bob Gibson threw really, really hard, had
Yeah.
great stuff.
Yeah.
He would have, at the very least, been one of the best pitchers in baseball today.
I agree
I
with
mean,
that.
Bob Gibson would have been as good as Garrett Cole today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
If you could bring him back in his prime, and I'm not prorating saying, well, because he would have had these nutrition supplements, a personal train. I'm saying the Bob Gibson of then, without being given any extras. I mean, because he was extraordinary, especially at 1968 season. You could take your best pitchers today and put them in a time warp and go back in time to 1968 and say you're pitching against those guys in 1968. None of them would have had a better year than Bob Gibson.
Oh, I definitely.
But I understand what you're saying, like changes that we don't understand about. When I was a kid, I remember this commercial that Whitey Ford was in. I forgot what it was about. It wasn't one of those Mapo commercials that they had at the time, but they said with Whitey Ford, he could throw a fastball 60 miles per hour, and that if you could grow up to throw a fastball 60 miles per hour. And I'm thinking to myself, in this day and age, 60 miles per hour, that's batting practice.
True.
But at the time, they wanted to make it seem that Whitey Ford was awesome, but they had no idea what he was really throwing.
Right. Okay? I agree. Definitely agree.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Jack, with that and with the little tribute we did to Bob Gibson, let's get into our debates. And our first debate is, if there was a chance that Muhammad Ali in his prime against Mike Tyson in his prime, go ahead, Jack. Who do you got?
I'm obviously ready. I'm obviously very ready for this. I mean, I have to make a point. Listen, I mean, a lot of boxing. I don't buy this stuff that they say boxing is 90% mental. Come on, give me a break. A crazy man on the street would convince himself he can beat anyone. So mentally, he thinks he could beat anyone, and then he'd get knocked out like that, Right. So, but the psychological factors can never be underestimated. And there was no one stronger psychologically than Ali. And Tyson was a bit fragile psychologically and so on. And right there off the bat, major edge to Ali. And Ali would go to work on Tyson immediately as soon as the fight was signed. I mean, the way he did with Liston and Foreman and so on. And let's face it, Tyson was known to unravel. You just have to look at the Holyfield fight. If you're going to bite a guy's ear, you don't unravel any, worse than that. And so Ali would have shown no fear of Tyson. So as far as the intimidation factor, what they say, that Tyson had guys beat before the first punch was thrown, it would be just the opposite. All the Tyson scowling and so-called intimidation would be getting nowhere with Ali, and Tyson would know it. That's what would make it bad, too, from Tyson's end. The idol worship factor. Tyson idolized Ali, okay, so on. So when you're fighting your idol, it's hard to have all that pent-up aggression and going at him because you always defer to your idol. And Muhammad Ali wasn't quite George Foreman's idol, but when Ali in the center of the ring met Foreman in Zaire, of course, the fighters sometimes talk to one another. Foreman wasn't talking. He just was staring Ali down the way Sonny Liston did, because Foreman came up as a young fighter and he was in camp with Liston and he tried to be like Sonny Liston. And Ali said, "You've been watching me since you've been a little boy, just playing those head games and so on." Now, Tyson's greatest attribute beside the intimidation factor was obviously punching power. I mean, he punched extremely fast and extremely hard. Okay? Ali's durability, again, was just about second to none. He could take a great punch. So let's say Tyson did get in there with a hard blow now and then. Ali would merely grab him, shake it off, move away and so on. Because, I mean, Ali's a guy, once again, took a phenomenal punch. Too good a punch for his own good at the end. The speed factor. Speed of foot, no comparison. I mean, Ali was, so much quicker speed of foot. Hand speed, one of Tyson's great strengths. His hand speed was no quicker than Ali's. Ali's was quicker, actually, than Tyson. So he's not going to have an edge in the hand speed. Timing. Ali's timing was a little better. And styles. Tyson was more predictable. He had excellent head movement, Tyson. But he would move in on a straight line. Ali could vary. He could fight off the ropes, go side to side. Had, much more of a variety of punches and so on. And once again, it comes down to the things styles make fights. And last but not least, I was listening to this historian, okay? This historian who I have tremendous respect for his boxing knowledge because he's watched a ton of films and he knows Mike Tyson better than anyone. And they asked him, who would have won a fight when they're both in their prime? Could Mike Tyson have beaten Muhammad Ali if they were both in their prime? And he went off on a tantrum. He went, hell no, there's no way he could have beaten Ali. Are you kidding? Ali would have popped him, this, that. You know who that person was?
Who's that?
This is the person who said it. This is the person who said there is no way Mike Tyson in his prime would have beaten Muhammad Ali. He said Muhammad Ali is the greatest of all time.
Well, Jack, listen, as you just said, Mike Tyson worshiped Muhammad Ali. So, of course, with all that idolism, with all that worship, Mike Tyson would defer to Muhammad Ali. But let's be honest for a second here, okay? Let's be honest. You know a little bit more about boxing than I do, but I've watched a lot of boxing in my life. So there's only one thing I can really compare this type of match to is who Muhammad Ali fought and who Muhammad Ali lost to. Now, I think Tyson is a mauler just like Joe Frazier was. Joe Frazier gave Muhammad Ali everything he could handle. He beat him once in the first fight. He should have won on points in the second fight. He definitely lost the third fight. Muhammad Ali said that was the closest to death that he has ever experienced. He fought Ken Norton. Ken Norton, another big guy, another unorthodox style. He lost to Ken Norton. And two of those other fights he fought with Ken Norton, again, they were very close, and you could have gave at least one of them to Ken Norton. So that's the only thing I can compare him to. Now, Ali beat Foreman, and Foreman's power at least rivals Tyson, but he never, ever had a rematch with George Foreman. And you know why that is, Jack? Because when he had that fight, Foreman connected with that one shot and almost knocked him out. Foreman got intimidated by Ali. He got talked down by Ali. He was psyched out by Ali. But guess what? Mike Tyson would never be psyched out by Muhammad Ali. Tyson has faster hands than Norton. He has faster hands than Joe Frazier. He can use both hands. Joe Frazier only had a big left hook. Tyson could knock you out with other hands. With both hands. And the great Sugar Ray Leonard said Tyson's hands were the fastest he ever saw on a heavyweight. So Ali would be up on his toes, bobbing, weaving, throwing his deadly left jab, and Tyson would be stalking him the whole fight. Then comes the 8th round. Tyson would catch Ali eventually with body shots, barrage him, and it would be over, Jack. A left hook or a right uppercut would land on Ali's jaw. And over the two careers, and I'm being honest because I do like and I do respect Muhammad Ali. Over the two careers, Tyson is better. Maybe not maybe one-on-one as far as the boxing skills. Maybe not as good as him at boxing skills, but as a mauler, as power, and his hand speed, he would beat Muhammad Ali.
Let me tell you something, okay? Before the 1980 United States Olympic hockey team met the Russians, Herb Brooks said we could play them 10 times, but they might win 9. He's not going to say they would win 9.
Right.
Really, they would win at least 9. On a given day, if they met 10 times, 20 times, maybe Tyson would win 1 time. Maybe 1 time if they fought every month of the year. And that's about as far as you could go with it. About as far as you could go. As far as the Joe Frazier comparison, Joe Frazier could fight nonstop from first bell to last. Tyson lost efficiency as the fight went on. Tyson's not going to he's throwing nearly the amount of punches that Joe Frazier threw. He's not going to be able to put on nearly the amount of effective pressure that Joe Frazier did. Tyson wouldn't set and throw punches. Joe Frazier would come after you. The Norton comparison is fair. Ali won 2 of the 3. All 3 fights were very close. But based on that comparison, Foreman knocked out Ken Norton in 2 rounds.
Right.
He knocked out Joe Frazier in 2 rounds. Then he signed to fight Ali. So people were using your evidence as to why George Foreman would obliterate Ali. They were basing it on common opponents and what he did to them compared to Ali. But it didn't work that way when they got in the ring. Ali could improvise, and one thing has, nothing to do with the other. And it's basically, and Tyson was a short guy too.
Yes.
Tyson had his most success, hitting guys basically his own height who weren't that much taller. Ali had like a good 5 inches on Tyson. Tyson would have to be punching up a bit. He would be losing effectiveness too. And he was tailor-made for Ali, height-wise, built-wise, so on. And I believe, Jack, that both in their prime, and I'm talking about Ali on his toes, which didn't have a lot of power. He had to wear you down to knock you out. He didn't knock you out in the first round. He didn't knock you out in the 3rd round. Ali would wear you down with that dangerous sledgehammer left jab and would throw it into your face, Frazier blocked that shots. Norton was unorthodox, could stay away from that jab and get inside. Tyson would come right inside under that jab. He would hit him with the body punches. He would wear down Ali. And I'm telling you, by the 7th round in his prime, and you could fight 2 out of 3 times, Tyson would beat Ali 2 out of 3 times. And I'm talking about Frazier had a one-shot man. He threw the right, but he had that left hook, and if he caught you with the left hook, the dance was over. Tyson had power in both hands, Jack. He's not going to – Ali can't just sit up and wait for that one big punch. He would have to be ready for 2 punches. And eventually,
with Tyson coming in, taking some shots, he would catch Ali.
Tall guys going against Tyson. Mitch Blood Green. Tyson knocked him out on the street when they had an altercation on the street. But before that, when they fought in the ring, it went the full distance, the full 10 rounds. Tony Tucker, big, tall guy, rated heavyweight, went the distance. Razor Ruddock, okay, tall guy, second fight went the distance, and Ruddock won a few rounds. Buster Douglas, tall guy. I have to tell you what happened over there. And keep in mind, some of those Ali fights you're talking about was kind of the second coming of Ali.
I agree.
There were two comings of Ali. The first one where he was virtually unhittable. Then he had the layoff. Then the second coming of Ali where he wasn't quite as good, but where he would improvise and so on. And and we could talk, if we're going to talk about who Tyson would beat, we could get into a much better discussion. Who would win between Tyson and Foreman? Who would win between Tyson and Liston? Who would win between Tyson and Frazier? That's a more viable discussion to make. But Tyson against Ali, they would have to fight a lot of times. And maybe Tyson would catch him, 1 month out of the year if they fought every month. I mean, it's like, I'll give you that much. It's not comprehension that Tyson could,
Yes.
Ali will win 11 months, Tyson 1 month if they.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think you're giving him enough credit, Jack. I think Tyson was a very compact, fast, strong man and could take punches too. Now, as he got older and he changed trainers, he ended up hooking up with Don King. He stopped training as hard, and then Buster Douglas caught him. And I knew before the fight that Tyson was in trouble. And just like Ali in his elder years, he should not have ever fought. He shouldn't have fought Spinks. He should not have fought. He should not have fought
Spinks. He knocked out Spinks.
I mean, in the first fight, listen. In the first fight, he did not knock out Spinks. In the second fight, he might have.
What are we
Wait, Leon Spinks did not.
About Leon Spinks.
Yes. So I mean, Ali should have stopped fighting at a certain point in his career. We all know that. Larry Holmes, that was a tragedy. I mean, but in their prime, Jack, I'm talking about with Tyson in his prime, under his own trainer, how he fought, how aggressive he was. He would give Ali all he could handle. I think he could beat Ali 2 out of 3 times. I'll give Ali at least 1.
I can't. No way. The frustrating thing about this debate is there's no way to prove it. It's always speculation.
Yes.
Who would have beaten who, so on. But there's so many of these dream matchups.
Yes.
Okay. And we're asked who would have beaten who. And I normally tell people who knows for sure, because think of all the current fights in which we're asked to predict, in which we're wrong in.
Right.
I mean, that's with everyone, in any sporting event. Who would have won this baseball series? Who's going to win the Super Bowl game? But Ali against Tyson at their absolute best. It's
would have
not
been a heck of a
exactly
fight,
one of those pick-em ones. If you go to the window in Las Vegas, and they're young men in the prime of their careers, I could guarantee you'll get 3-1 odds, on Tyson, so
yes,
odds on him if you go to the table.
Yes.
By the time Ali gets done talking, the money is going to come in on Ali.
And Ali was a great promoter, I'll tell you. Jack, we're up for this.
Oh, yeah.
This is a great job. We're going to go next to the top three shortstops in New York baseball history. So that does include the Dodgers, does include the Giants when they played in New York. So I guess since you went first this time, I'm going to go first. You went first last time. I'm going to go first this time, Jack. So number one, I think we both agree would probably be Derek Jeter. I mean, career leader at the Yankees.
You're going from number 1 down to number 3.
Yes, I'm going to go. Well, I just want to get Derek Jeter. I think we would both pick him number 1. So I'm going to give him his props, and you can jump in on this
now
too.
You're
and then
making my picks for me, man.
I would think you would.
I'm going to pick Derek Jeter because Derek Jeter said when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, when he was getting the announcement, Derek Jeter says, wow, it came is such a welcome thing. I was taking nothing for granted. I was so excited when I heard the news. And you know what my thought was, Derek? I hate saying this. You're full of it, Derek. In this one instance, because it was public how everyone was voting, how the votes were being tracked. I don't want to hear from Derek that how shocked he was and how pleasantly surprised that he was taking nothing for granted. Could you imagine a vote comes in and Derek Jeter doesn't make it on the first ballot and some other guys go?
That would have been ridiculous, and he knew it. So let me give you a little stats. The career leader for the Yankees with 3,465 hits, 544 doubles, games played 2,747, stolen bases 358, times on base 4,716. And if you think about that for a minute, with the history of the Yankees, with Ruth, Garrick DiMaggio, Mantle, and Rizzuto, that's pretty impressive. He's a 5 Golden Glove time winner, a 5 Silver Slug Award winner, 6 all-time in history of shortstops with hits, 14 All-Star selections, a lifetime batting average of .310 with 1,311 RBIs, 5-time world champion, 2000 World Series MVP, AL Rookie of the Year in 1996. His playoff batting average only gets higher, and the plays he made from the field were outstanding. I don't know anybody in New York history that affected a team as a shortstop and on the field, on field, off field, as Derek Jeter. So he's my number one, Jack. I figure he's at least in your top 3. And any more thoughts on that before I get to my other 2?
Well, I'll get to my 3. We'll
okay. I wanted to give you a shot to jump on the Mac train for a second and go for a ride. But that's
listen, this is a happy time for Derek Jeter. I mean, he's the CEO of the Miami Marlins, and what they're doing now. I mean, the excitement that's going on, and it's nice, pleasant. He's got to be over the top about this, and he was saying the other day how different it is watching this from playing, and they asked him that he miss playing, and he said, well, he didn't miss the regular season, but he missed playoff baseball.
I can imagine. So I'm gonna give you my number 3, Jack, and I'll work my way up to number 2. Number 3 is Pee Wee Reese.
Wait, you go from 1 to 3 to 2.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you 2 after that. I'm trying to get you confused so that when you okay, so Pee Wee Reese is my number 3 shortstop in New York history. Batting average .269, 2,170 hits, on base percentage was 366. Almost walked 4 out of 10 times. A .962 fielding percentage. He scored at least 75 runs a year from 1941 to 1956. 1,138 runs lifetime, 252 stolen bases. His fielding percentage led shortstops in putouts 4 times, and in top 10 in history in double plays. He's a 10-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, led the league in stolen bases in 1952, Jack. He was one of the players leading the charge to place Jackie Robinson on the team. And as the leader of the team, a petition was circulated in the clubhouse not to let Jackie Robinson play for them. Reese refused to sign it. A reporter even asked him if he felt threatened by Jackie Robinson possibly taking his position. He replied, if he can take it, he deserves it. And when Robinson was being heckled by fans booing him during the game right at home, it was in pregame in Boston, Pee Wee Reese, he's the captain of the Dodgers, went over, put his arm around Jackie Robinson, started to talk to him, and silenced the crowd. So not only was he a great shortstop for the Dodgers, he was the captain of the team. He showed being a captain of the team, bringing Jackie Robinson in and taking him on the team and leading him in that charge. So he's my number 3, Jack. Number 2, holy cow, Phil Rizzuto, right? As shortstop, averaged .273. 5 times All-Star in shortstops. In the history of baseball, his 1,217 double plays is only second to Lou Appling. His 968 fielding percentage is second only to Lou Bedreau, which is .973. In the series versus the Cardinals, he was hitting 324. He was hitting .381. In the 49-50 series, He was moved into the leadoff position, hit 324 with 200 hits, 92 walks, scored 125 runs while not making an error in 238 chances, setting a record for all shortstop. Now, when we talk about the Yankees, we really don't talk about the Scooter as much as we do the other players. I mean, when we were talking about DiMaggio, we talk about Mantle, we talk about a lot of great players in Yankees history. Of course, there's many of them.
Ted Williams said the difference between the Yankees and Red Sox, the reason the Yankees would always beat the Red Sox out was because of Phil Rizzuto. Ted Williams would always say Rizzuto was the difference.
Incredible shortstop, unbelievable player. So he's my number 2, Jack.
Okay. Now, I'm going to start at number 3. Okay. And I don't have either Reese or Rizzuto in because I feel the two of them, you can't have one without the other.
Right.
Okay. They say kind of like love and marriage. You can't have one without the other, even though in this day and age, I mean, anything goes.
Yes, it does.
Reese and Rizzuto, you leave one out, put the other in. It's it's a bit of a snub.
I agree.
But let me just say about the guys, Rizzuto and Reese, who I'm leaving off my list before I'm going to get on. Phil Rizzuto was generally considered to be the best sacrifice bunter ever.
True.
And that's what Billy Martin said. Rizzuto was the best bunter he ever saw. Billy Martin, who played alongside Rizzuto, next to him for a while too, he would have Rizzuto, come to camp while Martin was the manager of the Yankees. Even though Rizzuto was a broadcaster with the Yankees at the time as well, but he would come down and work with some of the Yankee hitters on bunting upon Billy Martin's request. So Rizzuto was an unbelievable bunter, just like a great fielder.
Yes,
too.
one of the best.
Outstanding fielder. In fact, Derek Jeter, and I know Jeter was saying it just to be nice. When Rizzuto passed away, Jeter said Rizzuto was the greatest shortstop in Yankee history. And if Jeter was going to eliminate himself, of course, Rizzuto was phenomenal. He was the spark plug of the Yankees, so on. When he was let go by the Yankees, it was a lesson for all of us to learn. He was advised by one of the other players, I don't remember who it was, not to say anything bad about being released. The way Casey Stengel did it was cold. He said, we only have space for such and such, and Rizzuto's name wasn't on there, and he was let go. He didn't badmouth anyone. So the Yankees then gave him an opportunity to be a broadcaster. And as great a player as he was, he even had more of a legendary broadcasting career than a playing career, which is a great question. That could be a debate on itself.
Well, I thought this was a debate. Is this a debate, Jack, or are you just agreeing with me?
No. I'm not taking. What I'm saying is which career Rizzuto's was greater, as a broadcaster player. I just want to say something kind about the guys I'm leaving out.
Okay.
Pee Wee Reese, too. 10-time All-Stars, you said, was like the heart and soul of the Dodger team. But the three guys I have ahead of them were just a little better. And unfortunately, we forget old timers. My number 3 choice. Let me get right to it. People out there haven't heard of him. Travis Jackson. Who the hell is Travis Jackson? Well, Travis Jackson played his whole 15-year career for the New York Giants from 1922 to 1936. And guess what? Travis Jackson's also a Hall of Famer.
Right.
He's also a Hall of Famer. And Travis Jackson was one of the best defensive shortstops of his era. He led the National League in fielding percentage. He was a better hitter than Rizzuto and Reese. He had 291 over his career. The other guys hit 269, 273. And he hit over 306 times. Travis Jackson was better than, Reese and Rizzuto. It's, just the way it goes. He didn't have the glamour that came later, but guess what? He was a winner. He played in 4 World Series.
Yes.
So he was with good teams as well. My second choice, I'm just talking about peak value.
Okay.
Nothing but peak value.
Okay.
Not quite the whole of his career. If you had a choice between Rizzuto and Reese at their best, or Jose Reyes at his very best, you go with Jose Reyes at his very best. Okay? Jose Reyes would create havoc on the base paths. I mean, Jose Reyes, if you had a 3-2 count on him, you better underhand lob the ball to him at home plate because you don't want to walk him. You walk him, you turn that walk into the equivalent of a double because he's going to be at second base. Jose Reyes, he was a heck of a hitter too. I mean, he was a batting champion. His 283 batting average might not seem overly impressive, but guess what? It was 10 points higher than Rizzuto's lifetime batting average, 14 points higher than Pee-wee Reese's batting average. I mean, in Jose Reyes, he was adequate defensively. He was never liability, there. And he would also, 4 times over his career, and this is a statistic no one really ever talks about, he did lead the major league in triples.
Yes, because of his speed.
4 times over his career. And you might say, oh, what's the big deal, a triple? Okay, but then I don't want to hear when a guy gets to second base with no outs that the next guy should give up an out just to move him over.
Yes.
With Jose Reyes, they didn't have to do it. He'd get to third base on his own and give them 3 cracks at the apple instead of 2. They wouldn't have to worry about sacrificing, moving him to, third base. He made a few all-star teams. He was dynamic. He was dynamic at his best, and I want people who might debate this pick or might not like this pick to remember this. When Jose Reyes was at his best, the hottest topic in New York baseball was who was greater, Jose Reyes or Derek Jeter. Those were the real big debates at the time. Jose Reyes had some support. Now, Matt, Derek Jeter's number 1.
Yes.
You have to look at his whole career. We have to be on the same page there. And you basically laid out practically everything with Derek Jeter, what he accomplished. So I'm not going to be repetitious, but I will say this. Think of the greatest players of all time. And at most, they'll have one highlight moment that you can recall. Some of them, you can't even recall a highlight moment. If I say the name of Willie Mays, you think of that World Series over-the-shoulder catch, but guess what? It's hard to think of other highlight moments of Willie Mays. You just know he was so great, okay? Derek Jeter, I could think of a number of highlight moments that go off the charts. There was that flip play against Oakland, where he, in the playoffs, where he ran down the line, snagged the ball, flipped it to Posada to preserve the 1-0 lead against the Oakland Athletics, and the Yankees went on to win the playoff series and go to the World Series that year, in large part because of that play. Derek Jeter, his 3,000th base hit. Look at how he did it dramatically, a home run. Okay, Derek Jeter against the Boston Red Sox would be running down the line, top speed, catch the ball, dove into the stands head first.
Yes.
Think of a spectacular play. The home run, the walk-off homer to win it against Arizona in the World Series. November 1st, gave him the nickname Mr. November. Not that he had much competition for baseball in November, but we remember that he got a Mr. November nickname even on that.
Yes, I remember that.
Which and how he closed out his career at Yankee Stadium, his last at-bat at Yankee Stadium, he gets a walk-off single.
Yes, the right side too, through the right side of the field.
Fans had highlight moments.
Yes,
and the ball hit in the hole. The ball hit in the hole between the shortstop and the third baseman. How many times have we seen him make that backhanded play and that leap throw in the air?
Yes.
Leap throw in the air. He should. I don't know whether he copyrighted that, but he should.
I mean, unbelievable plays. And we got to definitely agree on number 1 with Derek Jeter.
Derek Jeter, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a great shortstop, especially in New York history. So, Jack, not a lot of debating on that because I think your 3 were really good. I think my 3 stood up to your 3 there. And, I mean, it was to me was pretty even on that. What we're going to go into next, we're going to go into the greatest female tennis player in history. And
I mean, we had about 20 seconds left.
Yes, we did,
I
Jack.
kept looking at the clock like we were like an over.
No, sir. No, sir.
We ought to do in this show what Major League Baseball is doing. They put a guy at second base in extra innings.
Right, and just
like shorten the clock to 30 seconds when we went over. And that's it. Or like mute me or mute yourself.
Yeah, there you go.
And,
the 7 inning double inning.
I'm trying to make my points.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'm the greatest tennis player ever in history, Jack, and I want to preface this. I want to say the greatest retired female tennis player in history because I think that Serena Williams, if she retired today, I think it would be hard to debate that she would be number one. I think that Serena Williams is maybe the greatest. I think that. I think it would be hard.
Wait.
It would be hard.
You're saying Serena Williams is number one right now of all time, but she can mess it up by losing tournaments from here on in.
I understand that. I said if she retired today, Jack. I'm not talking about future. If she retired today, I think it would be hard to argue that. Maybe you could. But I have a feeling that neither one of us picked Serena. And the reason why I didn't pick Serena was because she's still active today. If she retired tomorrow, she would definitely be my number one pick. Thank you.
Cop out, Mac.
Thank you very much, Jack. So I'll let you go first. If you have Serena, great. If you don't, that's great too. So who is the greatest?
It depends what side of the bed I wake up on, okay?
Right.
I mean, I don't want to be held to this. One day I might feel it's Serena. The next day I might feel it's Martina Navratilova.
Okay?
It all depends on, the mood I'm in.
Yes.
Particular time. I mean, it's, and but if I had to pick one, I give a tiny edge to Martina.
Okay.
And, Serena Williams, she reminds me of this great heavyweight, Vladimir Klitschko. People don't realize Vladimir Klitschko has the second most heavyweight title defenses in history next to Joe Louis.
Right.
Yet no one rates Vladimir Klitschko as anywhere close to the second greatest heavyweight champion of all time. He barely makes top 10 lists from people if he does it all. Okay? The competition Serena Williams has faced, I mean, it's been the best of her era. Okay? But to my way of thinking, she really hasn't faced the icons of the sport. I know she has the 23 Grand Slam titles, 23 tennis and finals. She's been far and away the dominant women tennis player, of her era, far and away. I mean, and she's simply great. I mean, but the things Martina did were very comparable. Martina has 18 Grand Slam titles, as single Grand Slam titles. But if you look at what Martina did besides that, she also won 31 major double titles. And she won 10 mixed titles, men and women against another man and woman. So her 59 major titles is a record. Martina Navratilova went to the Wimbledon finals 12 times, and she won it 9 times, and Wimbledon is the most prestigious tournament.
Wait. Well, you're going to put doubles in there, Jack? We're talking about the greatest female tennis player of all time, and you're going to throw other people in there and include that and Martina's legendary run here. Come on. I mean, we're talking one-on-one. We're not talking about having another guy playing with you or another female playing with you. We're talking about, I've seen doubles men win that aren't even ranked. They're only ranked in doubles. They're not even ranked in the top 10 singles. So, that is, I don't know where you're getting that from.
If I wanted to tell you that Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player of all time, and then I said, and him and Scottie Pippen were the greatest duo, and then you'd stop me and question it. No, it's okay.
Well, listen, I might.
you're a cook,
That's a
Matt,
bonus.
you add something on to the food. You put a little salt or something on it.
Yes.
People are gonna they can't put down the quality of how you cook the meal.
Well,
Because you
I'm
put on
just
a
saying
little-
we're talking about the greatest single women's tennis player in the history of tennis, and you're going to bring in
Okay.
Martina
Over.
and wait a minute,
Okay.
Martina. Are we going to throw? Are we going to throw?
Okay, but let me tell you this.
Go ahead.
Over a period of 5 years,
Yes.
Martina Navratilova played 442 matches over a period of 5 years. She
Yes.
won 428 out of
That's
442. That's, to quote what they say about a baseball pitcher who throws a certain pitch, that's filthy.
yes.
That is filthy stuff. Oh, that's
All right.
nearly unfair, that level of dominance. She was ranked in the top 10 in singles. We're not talking about doubles. Ranked
Right.
in the top 10 in singles for 20 consecutive years. And she was ranked in the top 3 in singles for 15 of those years. So now
All right.
Martina not only had that greatness, she had the longevity, okay? And Martina was simply the best. Now, John McEnroe a couple of years ago, and this was maybe a bit unfair, he said Serena Williams, there's 700 men's tennis players who could beat Serena Williams. There was no need to go there with that. And then John McEnroe said, well, Serena could prove him wrong by just playing one of them. And Serena basically said to John McEnroe, dear John, just please leave me alone. And I like Serena's response.
Yes.
I
Yes,
backed
yes.
Serena 100%. There was no
Yes.
need for that. But guess what? Martina, it's largely forgotten. She had the guts to play against Jimmy Connors.
Yes.
And she played him a somewhat close match, but in all fairness, they did alter the court a little bit to help Martina out. But the idea, she was willing to take that challenge, against Jimmy Connors. And take the case of Chrissy Everett, great player. She owned Chrissy Everett. It wasn't even like a competition. I mean, it was, it was a complete mismatch against, a great player, when they would play. Martina Serena, it could go either way in reality. I give that little edge to Martinez.
Well, let me tell you, the greatest female tennis player of all time, and I put her right up with Serena also. And that's Steffi Graf. Was ranked number 1 for 377 weeks. The longest period any player, male or female, has held the number 1 ranking. Won 137 titles. Only player to win 3 Grand Slam tournaments in a year. 5 times, 88, 89, 93, 93, 95, and 96. She's the only singles player to achieve that Grand Slam since the hard court was introduced as a surface. Called by Billie Jean King, called her the greatest of all time. A panel of experts in 1999 assembled in tennis called Graf the greatest of all time. She beat Martina Navratilova in Wimbledon. The record was 9-9. I mean, it was close. Graf having a 4-2 in Grand Slams finals, and Martina a 5-4 record in Grand Slam matches. So she won more. I mean, she won the same, but lost more. Steffi Graf at her peak was probably the best tennis player, male or female, in the world against comparable competition, Jack. So even against Martina, she tied her up, and she at holding that record, ranked number 1 for 377 weeks, has never ever been done before in history.
Let me tell you something. We joke around, but what I'm going to say, serious business. One of the greatest tragedies in sports ever is the case of Monica Seles.
Yes.
When Monica Seles was in her prime and Steffi Graf was in her prime, Monica Seles was the superior player. Okay? Clearly the superior player, would beat Steffi Graf head to head, was just flat out better. then what happened, one of the Steffi Graf's crazy German fans goes on the court. He stabs Monica Seles.
I remember.
Okay? Well, lucky Monica Seles didn't die. Because the reason that crazy fan went out there, because Monica Seles was just better than Steffi Graf, and that was a way to elevate Steffi Graf to number one. Now, Steffi Graf visited Monica Seles in the hospital, I heard, but I don't remember Steffi Graf showing outward outrage. I don't know how. Obviously, Steffi Graf couldn't have backed something like that or wouldn't have been happy about something like that. And I'm not inferring she was, but it would have been nice if she showed a lot more public outrage to what happened. And the German government, instead of putting this guy in jail for attempted murder, they basically just sent him for psychiatric counseling. Okay?
Yeah, that was a tragedy.
And listen, at that time, Monica Seles had 7 major titles. After that, she only won 2 more.
I know.
Only winning 2 more was a great accomplishment, because when someone stabs you, psychologically, she never recovered from that. And she never recovered from the German government not doing anything about that horrendous crime as well. But Monica Seles, at the time of the stabbing, virtually everyone in tennis agreed was the better player and the higher rated player than Steffi Graf.
You can say that.
Martina against Steffi. I could just make Monica Seles against Steffi in their prime, but unfortunately, that opened the floodgates.
But we're not talking about right now Monica versus Steffi. We're talking about Steffi versus Martina. And Steffi played her equal and held the title and held the ranking for longer than Martina, Jack. So, I mean, not that Monica, if Monica could have kept playing, she might have been the greatest female tennis player of all time. We're not talking about that, even though that was a tragedy that happened to her.
Monica was better than Steffi, and they were established players. They were the top 2 players in the world at the time. Monica Seles was, number 1 then. Clearly, Monica Seles was the equivalent of, let's say, what Sandy Koufax was for that period of time. And the reason she lost, it wasn't because Steffi Graf started to play better and could match her. It was because one of Steffi Graf's crazy fans committed this horrendous crime. And in the words of Chris Everett, it worked. The whole idea was to remove Monica Seles from the picture so Steffi Graf could be number 1. And it worked, sadly. And it's such an injustice.
Well, I mean, you can say that, Jack, but we really don't know that. We don't know that Monica Seles, if she continued playing in her prime and Steffi continued playing in her prime, that Steffi wouldn't have caught her. That's like comparing, as we did now, that's like comparing a great competition one-on-one. We don't really know what would have happened if Monica didn't get stabbed. We really don't know that.
We don't know what would happen, but we know what did happen. When they were going head-to-head and they were in their prime, Monica Seles was better. Of course, Steffi Graf later on, because Monica Seles was out of the picture, and whether Steffi Graf would have brought her down the road later on, we don't know. I agree fully with that. But because of what happened, but when they played and they were at their very best, Monica Seles was better, and they were in their prime. Steffi Graf wasn't this young up-and-coming player who needed to get more experience. She was the same Steffi Graf who would later, without Monica Seles in the picture, could win all these major titles.
Right. All right. I'll give you that, Jack. But versus Martina, Steffi not only held her own, but she played Martina tough, 5-5, and
13 years older. Martina was 13 years older. And you want to know something? In major finals, despite that, Martina held a 5-4 edge.
Yes.
I suppose you want to bring in the doubles.
No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
5-4 edge in finals for Martina.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
and that's
yes. Okay, Jack.
yeah,
So that's over, and great,
okay.
great job. Okay, so we've got our next topic is pressure to win more in New York, the Jets or the Giants. And let me tell you, it's changed since we originally. I think the whole topics has changed since we originally were going to discuss this. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to go with the original and add what we can add since we first discussed having this topic. So I guess I'm going first this time. Pressure to win more, the Giants and the Jets. And let me see, Jack, I use the term little brother when it comes to the Mets and the Yankees. And I do that with the Giants and the Jets because, you know, the Giants have been around a lot longer. Their history is a little bit more longer. Same thing with the Yankees and the Mets. Not that I'm disrespecting the teams. It's just kind of a term of endearment. I mean, the Jets came in the 1960s. The Giants were on since the 1920s. So I believe you're a Jets fan. And if the Jets were in the Super Bowl, not playing the Giants, I'd probably root for the Jets. I mean, that's how I am. And because of the history of the Giants,
fan, Mac, or Jet fan?
I am a Giant fan. But
Giant
if the Giants didn't go to the Super Bowl and the Jets were in there, I would actually root for the Jets. I'm a New York kind of guy.
It's the worst rivalry in sports, the Jets and Giants. The worst rivalry in sports.
I understand that. Close to the Mets and the Yankees. I mean, I mean, at least the Mets and the Yankees have played each other once in the World Series. So it's kind of like for bragging ownership of the New York is what it all comes down to. So anyway, the Jets have their one Super Bowl in 1967. But the Giants' expectations are 68. A lot higher than the Jets. 69, sir, they won the Super Bowl.
Well, they won this game January 12th, 1969, but it was for the 1968 season.
I agree, yes, but they still won it in
1960. You're trying to get me on
Okay, but the Giants' expectations, I mean, they're a lot higher than the Jets. If the Jets make the playoffs, it's a party. If the Giants make the playoffs, that's what they're supposed to do. At least that's the history of the Giants. Now, your belief that the coach of the Jets might get fired, I believe that right now as we're going on. And if the Jets don't have a good season, but if they went 8-8 and maybe got a wild card, they might keep. Believe it or not, they might still keep Gase. Suppose he turns it around. He gets them to 7-9, 8-8. The calls may stop. But you know, if the Giants don't go 6-10, 7-9, they're going to be calling for Gettleman's head. I mean, if their offense isn't in sync, fans will say to Garrett to go back to Dallas, basically. I mean, if under McAdoo and Shermer, the Giants are a laughing stock. They were a laughing stock. And with their historic significance and the high expectations, the Giants are under pressure every year, including this year. So I believe that even though they're off to an 0-3 start, if it gets 0-8, 0-9, people are going to get upset on the Giants side. They right now they say it's rebuilding. But once it hits 0-8 or once it hits 0-7, that's going to change very quickly. And the team right now, the way they're playing, the way the offense is not in sync, the way the defense last week against the San Francisco 49ers looked like, I mean, it just looked atrocious. Once they hit that mark, or they're 1-7, they're going to be crying for Gettleman to leave. They're going to be telling the owners to sell the team. They might even get on Judge and say, well, him running the laps was stupid and bringing this stuff in isn't working with these players. The Jets, on the other hand, even though I even heard this sportscaster who was a huge Jets fan, he's a major broadcaster, and he said, you know, I'm tired of calling for Adam Gase's firing. The Jets organization under the last 10 years has just been atrocious. It doesn't matter who you put the head coach in there. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter. They got used to me, the Jets fans have become almost immune or even in a place where they kind of expect them not to have a good year. They expect them to be average. 7-9 last year to them was great. I mean, I listened to Jets fans. We did very good. The Giant fans aren't like that. So I think the Giants are under more pressure this year to win than the Jets.
I mean, basically what you're saying, Matt, the Jets are beyond hope.
Yes.
So who cares that there's no pressure is what you're saying. Let me tell you something, okay? One of the happiest days of my life happened when I was in high school. I love the AFL. And when the Jets beat the Colts to win the Super Bowl, the sense of pride I showed being a kid was unbelievable. I would go to Shea Stadium, watch those games with Joe Willie Namath and the Jets. Such pride. But if you told me in high school when the Jets won the Super Bowl to enjoy it because they're not even going to be back playing another Super Bowl, I'm going to be a grandfather before they play another Super Bowl, I wouldn't believe it. Now think of it. They won the Super Bowl when I was in high school. I'm a grandfather now, and they haven't been back to the Super Bowl. And the thing about it, they're not within even sniffing distance of going back. Not even within sniffing distance. What I hate to hear in sports is the dreaded 5-year plan. They get a new coach. He's got a 5-year plan. He's got talent. They're building something. What are they building? I mean, that's an excuse for so they could lose a couple of years and everyone would leave someone else alone. Now, the media plays such a big part in this. I mean, such a big part in this because the media all of a sudden decides that someone's on the hot seat. They're not told that anyone's on the hot seat. They're not told by anyone in the Jet organization that Adam Gase is in danger of losing his job. But they decide, well, if they lose another game, he must be in danger. And it's kind of like the thing with Richard Jewell, when one media outlet said, he was going to under suspicion as being the Atlanta bomber during the Olympic Games. All the other media outlets all of a sudden went with it and went like wildfire. And people started believing it, And whether Adam Gase is in the hot seat or not, it's bad what's going on. I mean, it's really bad what's going on with the Jets. And in the NFL, unlike Major League Baseball, it's hard to make trades that could really help a team a lot. You basically have to do it through the draft. You could pick up the occasional free agent, but even that usually doesn't make a big impact. See, Le'Veon and Bell, Adam Gase inherits him, and supposedly he wasn't crazy about having a running back, as good as Bell is. But Bell's out, for the year too. So what could I tell you? But the Giants are given a pass for the time being because they do have a new coach, Joe Judge, and he's been basically a popular choice. They understand he's coming in from ground zero, so it would be cruel to call for Joe Judge's firing at this point or to criticize him much. And reportedly, there's no dissension amongst the players.
Right.
The players are on board. He hasn't lost the team. So he's not on any pressure this year. The one who's under pressure is more Dave Gettleman.
Right.
If Daniel Jones doesn't play well, so on, the team's not winning, someone has to be blamed. So in the case of Gettleman, it's going to come down to him. But one thing about Giant ownership, they always try to be fair. They always look to see is progress being made, okay? It's not so much about the win-loss record if they feel the team is moving in the right direction. And the Giants also, keep this in mind, the Giants from the 1980s, from 1986 to last, let's say, 35 years, they've been to 5 Super Bowls and they won 4.
Well, this is why, Jack, I think that the Giants are under more pressure. I mean, what I mean by pressure is that the expectations of the Giants fans are to be that Super Bowl team, are to be them 5 Super Bowls. Where the Jets, it's been so long since they went to a Super Bowl. They came close in the 80s and 86. I think they lost to Cleveland in the championship game.
Well,
They
under
came,
Rex Ryan, they went
they
to
came,
the AFC
yeah, right,
Championship
and they came
twice.
close under Parcells too when they played the Broncos
Yeah.
and Rex Ryan. So I mean, they've been there, but they haven't gone to that promised land since '69. And I'm telling you, fans get into a mindset. The Red Sox fans used to have this. The Mets fans sometimes have this, where, well, this is what the team is, and we almost expect that. When you have high expectations of a team, as the Giants fans do, and because of the Giants' history of being in so many championships, of being in those 5 Super Bowls, winning 4 of them, they have an expectations of to be that type of team. And since, and this goes back way before Gettleman, since Reese was the GM, they've steadily been falling off, and Gettleman is trying to build something out of nothing. And I think he's doing an okay job, but that's not good enough for the Giants fans. That's not good enough that you draft great players or make some decent free agent moves. They want to win it right away. And, they're not going to blame Judge right now because Judge is in his first year. The pressure I'm talking about, Jack, is coming on the Giants organization, their organization itself. Oh, we got Barkley, he got hurt. We got our first round cornerback, he's in jail. Well, all this type of stuff falls back, even though it's unfair sometimes, on the organization itself. The Jets organization, I think they've had like 10 head coaches in the last 20 years or something. It's something ridiculous. They change head coaches down there like you change your socks. So I think that the Jets fans right now are in that numb zone where, well, we have high, we feel we could do this, but we really don't believe that. Where the Giants fans believe every year you change something over, you get something, we got a shot at going to the playoffs. We should be in the playoffs, and they get very upset when they're not in the playoffs, Jack.
Well, rooting for sports team is like being in the hope business. You need hope. Listen, the Yankees, for example, the last time they won a World Series, the last time they were in a World Series was in 2009.
Yeah.
That was 11 years ago. That's a long time already. It's getting to be a very long time, over a decade. I'm a big believer you win a championship, even if you don't win, your team doesn't win a game the next few seasons, have a smile on your face because you got
Right.
to the top of the mountain, so on. So I don't want to hear any complaining. But once it's gotten to be over a decade, okay, let's start winning again. But at least with a team like the Yankees, every season they're in the mix. They're a legitimate World Series contender. There's a real chance of winning the championship. If it doesn't turn out that way, at least the whole year's been exciting, okay? You've had hope all year. With the Jets, there's really any hope, and it's getting to be very tiring and sickening. They gave us a little hope actually going into this year, just not a lot of hope, a little hope, because like you said, I mean, they won 6 of their last 8 games. They
Right.
closed out, the second half of the 6-2 record. They were 7-9 overall. But when you look at what they did the second half of the season, now you're thinking if they could pick up where they left off, and with New England maybe finally in line to take a little dip with Tom Brady leaving, maybe the Jets could contend for playoff spot, and then who knows? I mean, maybe this is the next step. And then they start the year like this, and what it tells us, that 6-2 finish was an illusion. And they might give us another illusion before it's over. They have 12 games to go. Even if they're to go 8-4 over the last 12 games, which no one believes they're going to do, of course. But let's say they do and they finish 8-8. They're not going to be in the playoffs, but people are going to get excited again, say, oh, they're headed in the right direction. Look what they're going to do next year. And then next year, they're going to give us a 5-11. I mean, the pattern is getting to be tiring.
That's what I'm saying, Jack. I mean, you get to a point as a fan, and I was at this point when I was growing up a Giants fan. I mean, I rooted for my team to win in the 60s and the 70s. I rooted for them to win but I knew they weren't going to win. I mean, I had hoped that they were going to get better, but I knew, with the way the team was run, that this was what it was. Now, my father grew up, the Giants were in the championship all the time, so he was more sick than I was. So as I got used to this, and when they hit the 86, I went crazy. So now that they established that they can do 4 Super Bowls, I think it's in 3 different decades or 4 different decades, however you want to say it, and go to the Super Bowl 5 times, that expectation comes up. You're talking that they're thinking, the Giant fans are thinking that their history of the team, and partly rightly so, is that in line with the Steelers? Is that in line with the Cowboys? That's what the Giant fans feel. But the
present tense, that's what we're only talking about.
Right,
present
right.
tense. The Giants, no one this year, virtually no one, I should say, we're picking the Giants to go to the playoffs this year. This year. That's all we're talking about. This year was understood. It was a gimme for Coach Joe Judge. New coach coming in, forming the team a certain way, and to look forward to the future, that they're really building something. And when fans understand their team is in a rebuilding mode for that year, and only 1 year, they're willing to give the team the benefit of the doubt for that 1 year, okay? And that's the situation with the Giants. The Jets aren't in any type of rebuilding mode, per se. I mean, they have their players, and it's a mess. It's really kind of like a mess. And so on, and
but see, that's my point, Jack. The fans of the Jets are almost used to this. They're almost like, yeah, this is what's going to happen. The butt fumble. This stuff is something that they almost expect, that the Jets will not be in the playoffs. They want to be competitive, yes. But do they expect them to go and win the division? Some of them did. They hope that. But down deep, they know, hey, listen, the Jets are the Jets right now. We are where we're at. It's been this way for a long time. The Giant fans, even though it's been a long time since we've been in the Super Bowl also, they expect a championship contender.
The fan base of the Jets is fed up. That's why everyone is calling for Adam Gase's head. That's why there's such turmoil. I mean, it's the Adam Gase watch. Is he going to get fired? This and that. How long are they going to put up with him? And then guess what? If the Jet ownership decides they're going to want to stick with Adam Gase, fans are going to become more infuriated.
Yes.
And then they're gonna have to take it out on someone. And if Adam Gase is here to stay, they're gonna take it out on Sam Darnold more.
But what's their decision, Jack, this year? I mean, what do they really do? Where do they go? Do they get another head coach? Do they?
This year, the law. The year you have to play it out with Adam Gase. You're not gonna get Mike Tomlin to come over, someone like that this year. But that's you're just gonna have to play out the year. But every week, think of yourself as a player, Mac. Did you play football?
Yeah, for over 10 years, Jack. Yes,
okay, Mac. Right, exactly. I don't count what I did. Service leagues. They put me on the line. As tackle with my lack of weight, and I made the guy who was blocking me made it look good. When the play was over, I kind of ran towards the quarterback. Chance of getting to him.
You're beautiful.
The thing about it is, think of yourself as a player. If you're inside, if you're playing for the Giants now, you understand you're losing games, but the pressure under is, are you going to be there in the future? That's what you're playing for.
Right.
The Jets, they're not playing for the future per se. It's just it's a mess. At the time I do. The bell went off. I'm fed up with them.
You're done with that, right?
Yeah, so. I don't even want to talk about them. I'm glad. I don't want any overtime on this.
Now we have Jack, we have a topic coming up right now, and this is going to be very interesting because we're going with the greatest. And even though this show covers the Northeast, and we now cover the Patriots and the Eagles and the Bills and stuff like this. This was done ahead of time when we were just a New York show, and so these topics will change as we go. But We have the greatest New York running back in the history of New York. So, I mean, we're talking right now, we're just talking Giants, Jets, and Bills. Who would be your pick as the greatest running back in the history of New York football?
Let me tell you, I mean, one thing I've noticed for the most part, I mean, New York had one superstar running back in its history, one true superstar running back who I wouldn't necessarily put number one on my list. Okay, two. But when you think of superstar running backs, who do you think of? The great Jim Brown. You think of Walter Payton.
Yes.
You think of Emmitt Smith, Eric Dickerson, Barry Sanders, and so on. And the closest thing to one of them would be O.J. Simpson, I would think. Okay, all in all. And listen, let's forget him for a moment. Yeah, well, I shouldn't say let's forget. I mean, O.J. Simpson, we know about his situation, and I don't have the highest opinion of O.J. Simpson off the football field, and we're basically going to leave it, at that. But O.J. Simpson was a spectacular running back coming out of USC, and so on, won the Heisman Trophy there. And O.J. Simpson, was a 5-time Pro Bowler, and he would make spectacular plays, long runs. He had a season, where he gained over 2,000 yards and so on. But if you take away the spectacular plays that O.J. Simpson made, he wasn't necessarily the greatest blocker, and he had a tremendous offensive line.
Yes.
Okay, a better offensive line than the other guys, anchored by Reggie McKenzie. They were called the Electric Company.
Yes.
Okay, and they were, and that line had so much to do with O.J. Simpson's success. But O.J. Simpson would rattle off, let's say, a eye-catching 45-yard run, and then in the whole next possession, he wouldn't be there, basically, not through lack of effort. He was a highlight, a film reel, basically, watching O.J. Simpson. And New York had other great running backs, okay? They had Curtis Martin. I mean, how could you not love Curtis Martin? He was outstanding, consistent, and he played a few years in New England, more years with the Jets. But for some reason, I think of him being just as much a Patriot. I don't know why. But that's what enters into my head. Maybe because Bill Parcells had him with the Patriots
and brought him.
Had him with the Jets.
Right.
Again, the guy who I would normally rank number one, Mac, if he had played his whole career with the Jets, and he did with the Jets what he did with the Washington Redskins, would have been John Riggins.
Wow,
John Riggins was unstoppable when he was with the Washington Redskins. He was excellent with the Jets, off the charts with the Redskins. When the Redskins beat the Dolphins in the Super Bowl, Riggins was unstoppable. I mean, really, he was a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, power and speed.
But the guy I would put the guy I'm going to take isn't exactly the most popular choice in itself, but I like a lunch pail guy. I like a guy who's consistent on the field, and that's Tiki Barber. Now, Tiki Barber had a 10-year career, and he was extremely durable, playing practically every game. And he averaged 4.7 yards per carry, which was the same, ironically, as O.J. Simpson averaged. But the difference was Tiki Barber would grind the yardage out. Of course, he would have the occasional long run, but he was a grinder. He would keep the chains moving over and over. And unlike O.J. Simpson, Tiki Barber was excellent in catching passes out of the backfield and blocking. He was the equivalent of that all-purpose back. The guy who did, everything. And Tiki Barber, had he not retired a year early and stuck around with the Giants when they won the Super Bowl, that would have put him over the top in the Hall of Fame, without a doubt about it. But as it is, I mean, some of the things he did, do you know, after the age of 30, outside of Tiki Barber, the most 200-yard rushing games that any back had was just one. A handful of guys just had one 200-yard rushing game. But Tiki Barber, after the age of 30, he had four
Yeah.
200-yard plus rushing games. And for a four-year period, talk about dominance from 2003 through 2006, he had the most yards from scrimmage of any back in football, And his teams did win too. I mean, he helped lead his team to a Super Bowl. They lost to the Ravens. In his 10-year career, they did make the playoffs 5 times. So Tiki Barber, despite missing the Super Bowl winning year, was a winner. But unfortunately, he got caught up a little bit in controversy. He criticized Eli Manning, would feud a bit with Tom Coughlin. So from a PR perspective, he became pretty unpopular, which we saw when Tiki Barber was inducted into the Giants' Ring of Honor during a Sunday night game. These idiot fans are booing him. Giant fans are booing Tiki Barber as he's being inducted into the Ring of Honor. And if you're mad at Tiki Barber for whatever reason, just be quiet while he's in the Ring of Honor.
Well, Jack, and I'm going to stop you there just for one reason. I don't think the Giant fans were stupid for booing Tiki Barber. It's because what he said, and he came out with these opinions and these things in the press for his own personal fame, because he was looking to go further in broadcasting, which it didn't happen. He ended up falling on his face, and I was happy about that. Listen,
he has a good show now. I mean,
Listen. He went on to Good Morning America. He went on to Good Morning America and blew it. He's not even on the sidelines anymore as a commentator. He may have a good show on the air right now, but as far as going and being on a national stage, he kind of fell on his face because I don't know why. But listen, you can't disparage your team and expect the fans to shut up or be quiet when you're going to be put into the team's Ring of Honor. You can't expect that, Jack. I think that maybe it would have been a little more classy if they didn't boo. But I'm glad they booed. I mean, listen,
he didn't commit what O.J. Simpson did. I mean,
but he did something in fandom in sports that might even be worse than what O.J. Simpson did as far as sports go. I mean, O.J. got in trouble outside sports, which was terrible. And I'm not saying that it's worse than what Tiki Barber said. I'm saying within the realm of your team, the team that you played for, the team that you represented, to turn around and to talk to you about your team like that for personal gain is what it was, Jack. There's no doubt about it in my mind. To do this for personal gain, to show that maybe you're not you're not rooting for the home team kind of thing, that was ridiculous. He should have.
I'm not saying he should listen. If Tiki Barber is working, let's say as a sideline reporter, and the Giant fans see him walking along the sidelines, getting ready to do his job, and they boo him. Okay, I'm okay with that, but not the night he's being inducted into the Ring of Honor for his achievements as a Giant.
Listen, I get your point. Listen, I get your point as far as on field, right. But you're going into a Ring of Honor not just for the ball playing you did on the field, but representing the Giants team. And what he did after he left the Giants was totally wrong. He should have had a little more class and not called the team out. He didn't have to do that. Listen, I understand what you're saying. He was a great football player on the field for the Giants at the time. I agree with that. And I agree he's one of the best in New York history. I agree with you there. But what he did was classless, was crazy, and was for self-indulgence. And when he went into the Ring of Honor, you're representing the Giants. When he opened his mouth and did that, come on. You just don't do that. And I don't blame the fans for booing him.
I blame for booing him that night. That's my thing about it. I mean, normally I agree with what you're saying about Tiki Barber. I'm not disputing it. I'm not saying he's a good guy. I'm not saying what he did was right. He got involved making comments when Michael Strahan had a contract dispute with the Giants. Even if you felt Strahan was wrong, it's not your business. Just kind of leave it alone. But but what he did for the Giants is undeniable. And if he didn't have the big game, the last game of his career where he got the Giants into the playoffs, Tom Coughlin may have been fired. And if
Yeah.
Tom Coughlin's fired, maybe they don't win those 2 Super
Tom,
Bowls.
Tom Coughlin was getting fired every year, Jack. But let me tell you something. He disparaged. He said things against Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin helped fix his fumbling problem that he had with the ball. So listen. I'm going to tell you. I'm with you a little bit on Tiki, but there's one better, Jack. Thurman Thomas of the Buffalo Bills. In my opinion, Jack, off field has something to do with on field, and I'm not the only. Not only Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, not because of his play, because what he did off the field. And that has something to do with your career. Now, I know that a player is not only great, an impact player on the field, but has to have some kind of, has something off the field too. Now, Thurman Thomas is not only a Hall of Famer, a 4-time AFC championship, Thurman Thomas of the Buffalo Bills, and this is his stats now. He was drafted in the second round in 1988, played 12 seasons with the Bills, Hall of Fame 2007, 5-time Pro Bowl selection, MVP in 1991, the Offensive Player of the Year in 1991, had over 12,000 yards rushing, 4.2 yards per carry, 65 rushing touchdowns, 4,458 receiving yards, 23 receiving TDs. He had a total of 16,532 yards. He's the only running back in the history of NFL to lead in total yards 4 consecutive seasons. One of only 5 running backs to have rushed for over 1,000 yards in 8 consecutive seasons. He set NFL player records for the most career points for 126 and TDs at 21. In a 1981 playoff loss to Cleveland, he caught 13 receptions, Jack, for 150 yards and 2 TDs. That's a wide receiver's numbers, Jack. Thurman Thomas was part of an offense that dominated the AFC.
Thank you for making my argument, Matt. It was part of an offense that dominated. When you have a quarterback like Jim Kelly throwing to receivers like James Lofton and Andre Reed, it certainly takes some pressure off the running back because the defenses have to key on those guys. So it allowed Thurman Thomas to do certain things that Tiki Barber wasn't allowed to do. I mean, the defense wouldn't bunch up, quite to stop the run the same way.
Well, listen, Thurman Thomas, Tiki Barber was almost as good a receiver as Thurman Thomas. And the Giants did have weapons. I mean, even in that Super Bowl year, they had weapons. And even though their quarterback sometimes would light you up and sometimes would play for the other team and throw interceptions. I mean, listen, I say Thurman Thomas because Thurman Thomas, not only did he have these impressive numbers, not only was he a leader of the Buffalo Bills offense yet, but he was a man who just did his job. He was a man that went out there.
He's a man. I recall him forgetting his helmet during the Super Bowl.
Well, he didn't need a helmet, Jack. He didn't need a helmet.
The Bills' futility.
That's how good of
remembers Don Helmet.
That's how good of a running back he was, Jack. He didn't need a helmet to play.
He was outstanding.
Yes.
Thurman Thomas was outstanding.
Yes.
And what people forget, had Buffalo beaten the Giants in the first of their 4 Super Bowls, the writers well set to name Thurman Thomas Super Bowl MVP. Imagine what that would have been for his career. He's a Hall of Fame as is. Don't get me wrong, okay?
Yes.
So I'm not saying it would have added a great deal to his legacy, but he would have been a Super Bowl MVP. That's Super Bowl number 1. So he would have been best player on the field, Super Bowl number 1. But for Super Bowl 2, 3, and 4, he was arguably the worst player on the field. He was awful.
Yes.
Awful. Fumbled the ball, in Super Bowl 4 that was returned for a touchdown, just dropped it. Yeah. And he just didn't show up to 3 Super Bowls in a row. And as Terry Bradshaw once said, great players have to play great in big games.
I agree.
Okay,
But you know, Jack,
to play great in 1 out of 4 Super Bowls and to be horrendous in 3 out of 4, it wasn't showing the true
well,
heart of a warrior.
you could say the same thing about Jim Kelly. You could say the same thing about Bruce Smith. I
Jim
mean,
Kelly played
listen,
well in game
you
2
could,
of
you
the
could.
Super Bowl
I'm
against
just saying,
Redskins.
you could say that, Jack. I mean, these guys went to the Super Bowl and they lost too. Thurman Thomas is a running back. You depend on the offensive line, and at that time, the AFC is why I said the AFC was not nearly as strong as the NFC, especially defensively. I mean, the defenses in the NFC at that time were dominant with the Bears and the Giants and the Skins and all these great teams. Even the 49ers had a top 3 defense when they won the Super Bowls. At that time, the AFC was a run and shoot, throw the ball down the field at that time in history in the 80s. And the NFC dominated them. What I'm saying is, even as you made my point, if that field goal went through, Thurman Thomas would have been the MVP, not O.J. Anderson. And it would have added to his legacy. I bet he wishes he had. I bet he wishes he had that Super Bowl win more than the Super Bowl MVP itself, because at least he could say he won, and he did his job at the end of the game there, Jack, to win that MVP. So against one of the best defenses in the history of football, I might add. So I'm just saying that when they were matched up against the Cowboys, the Redskins, when they lost those other Super Bowls, it was just Buffalo Bills was just not good enough.
We haven't even mentioned an honorable mention. He wasn't quite the best, but an honorable mention, Frank Gifford.
Yes.
If we're going to the 50s, early 60s, and Frank Gifford was part of a historical play that he complains about now against the Baltimore Colts, when the Baltimore Colts won that legendary Super Bowl game in overtime against the New York Giants, which is called by some as the greatest NFL game ever because it introduced us to big-time NFL football. Gifford took a pass, and he was stopped on 3rd down, and he said where the official placed the ball was unfair, because he placed it a little short of the 1st down marker, meaning the Giants punted, and then Johnny Unitas took the Colts all the way down the field for the tying touchdown, and then won it right after that in overtime.
Yeah.
But, he was a terrific player with catching the ball out of the backfield, running, and so on. And
I definitely agree that.
Problem. Remember Johnny Sample, the Jets captain, who would always talk smack. He was the ultimate trash talker. And Frank Gifford, who believed the game had to be played a certain way, a gentlemanly way, in the sense that you never badmouth an opponent. Johnny Sample would tell him stuff, you're too pretty to play this game, because he always tried to intimidate players. That was Johnny Sample's thing. He kept a book. Oh, by the way, for those who don't know, Johnny Sample was the defensive captain of the Jets the year they won the Super Bowl. Years before that, he was cornerback of the Baltimore Colts for their 2 championship wins over the Giants. But Johnny Sample could hit guys late, pile on, and eventually he got blackballed from the NFL, and then he signed with the AFL with the Jets. And then one thing led to another. The Jets wound up merging with the NFL, playing the Colts in the Super Bowl, and him getting his revenge. With the Jets, winning.
Yeah, and I mean, there are in my knowledge of, there are some really good running backs on all 3 teams. I mean, I could mention Emerson Boozer. I mean, Ron Johnson. I mean, there are Mackey. I mean, there are some great running backs that did some great things at great times, even great running backs on bad teams. So, I mean, I think that we can come up with the best 2, Jack. I think Thurman Thomas gets the edge over Tiki in New York history. We're not talking compared to Walter Payton and Barry Sanders and that crew right now. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about it in New York history. I think we came up with the best 2 with Thurman Thomas and Tiki Barber on the field. Okay, so, Jack, for our last debate, and we came up with this on the fly because we knew we were going to have a little bit more time on 2 hours, and we wanted to cover, and we're going to hit the Yankees again, and because of their history and because of their tradition. I mean, the Yankees do dominate, whether we like it or not. They do dominate baseball, and there's a lot of topics that come along with that. So we're going to go over the history of the Yankees and the greatest Yankee of all time. And I think, Jack, this is very tough because of the history. I mean, Babe Ruth actually changed the baseball world. He took it from a sandlot game to a professional game. He changed sports. If you want to, this guy was something else. He became a one-man show. Lou Gehrig. What can you say about that, man? If Ruth wasn't around, Gehrig might be the greatest Yankee of all time. DiMaggio, Mantle, Maris, Rizzuto, we talked about. But I'm telling you, I'm gonna make it a little more modern, Jack. I'm gonna go with a guy that we just talked about a little while ago, a guy that carried himself on and off field with more class and leadership than any Yankee that I can remember anyway. And I'm going to go with Derek Jeter. He played at the highest level all through his career, a very good to excellent shortstop. As we mentioned, the clutch defensive plays he made, his backhand flip against the A's that got the Yankees to the World Series. The throw is offline. He catches it in foul territory, makes a quick flip to Posada, and we won the game because of this. We talked about him diving into the seats and coming out with a bloody nose. He always gave everything on the field he could, a tremendous hitting, clutch hitting. He made that backhand reverse flip in the air throw that I really had never seen done as much as he's done it. His clutch hitting again, batting average was over 300. He hit better in the postseason, while most people at the end.
Consistency, Mac. Just one real quick. He had a 310 lifetime batting average in the regular season and over 158 games in the postseason. He had 308, so he was the same player. Superior pitching.
Yeah, and not only that, Jack. This is the end of the year where you get a little tired and you get a little bit more worn out, and as you're saying, you're facing the better pitching staffs and the tougher teams, and it's all or nothing. And he just is calm, and he just went out and did his job. I remember him saying one day when I was first the Yankees shortstop, I kept saying to my head, "Don't hit it to me, don't hit it to me, don't hit it to me." And then as the years went on, he says, hit it to me, hit it to me, hit it to me. And he even, Jack, when he has personal parties, it's been reported because of the way he handles his personal life, the media, that he has all people with cell phones in a basket before they come in. He doesn't want no pictures. You don't hear him going out to the clubs. Once in a while they catch him. You don't hear too much about his personal life. He's to himself. He handles the media the way people, I think, should handle the media, as far as that New York media, which is all encompassing. It's so hard to keep a personal life and to keep an even keel. He seems to have done that all through his career. If there's a player that you had to pick, I think, and considering all the great players that have been in Yankees history, I would go with Derek Jeter.
Well, the obvious answer, we're talking about a comparison of two players. We're not doing all the Yankee history because no one tops Babe Ruth.
I agree with that.
Obviously, he's the most iconic Yankee of all time. No one quite challenges him. Now, numbers 2 and 3, you could have a great debate for, but they're ahead of the rest of the pack, and that would be Lou Gehrig and Joe DiMaggio. Who's more of an iconic Yankee, Gehrig or DiMaggio? That's a debate for another time.
Sure.
Number 4, I think, behind number 2 and 3, but safely in number 4, I think is the Mickey Mantle.
Yes.
Okay. But number 5 and 6 is very interesting. Once we start at number 5, because it comes down to two guys. And now, who's a more iconic Yankee player? Not who's a greater Yankee player. For example, Mariano Rivera is called the greatest reliever of all time. He's obviously an iconic Yankee player, probably a top 10 of all time. But he's not quite as iconic as a Yankee player as Derek Jeter, for example.
Right.
Because an example would be Mac. Take a 12-year-old girl who'd go to a Yankee game. The only player they would know would be Derek Jeter.
Right.
Okay? But it comes down to Derek Jeter for the number 5 spot. Derek Jeter or Yogi Berra.
Okay.
Who is a more iconic Yankee player? Now, if you want to say how great a player each guy was, you can't really. How do you compare catcher to a shortstop? I'm not going to start. I can't compare Johnny Bench to Roberto Clemente, for example,
Right.
and say who was a
Right.
greater player.
Right. Right.
I can't compare Sandy Koufax to Mariano Rivera if they ask me who was a better pitcher. It's different.
Yeah.
One was a reliever, one was a starter. They were both great players. Derek Jeter had a 20-year Yankee career. Yogi Berra had a 19-year career, 18 with the Yankees. Year 19, he kind of got dirtied up. He played a few games with the Mets, but no one cared. But Yogi Berra, I give a little edge to over Derek Jeter as being a greater Yankee, a more iconic Yankee. And you have to understand the relationship with Yogi Berra and the Yankees, despite the absence where he feuded with George Steinbrenner, kept away from Yankee Stadium. Eventually, it got back on track. Derek Jeter retired from the Yankees. He moved on to the Miami Marlins in an executive position. And that's basically it with Derek Jeter as far as his activity with the Yankees in all probability. Yogi Berra had 2 stints as a manager of the New York Yankees and actually took him to the 7th game of the World Series after he retired. Heck, he was even manager of the Mets, took him to his 7th game of a World Series. And he came back to the Yankees as a coach on a number of World Series winning teams. Also, he was always around. And the things that Yogi Berra would say would be in folklore. I mean, come on. I mean,
Very
it ain't
true.
over till it's over. I mean, that's one of the classic American lines, and a bunch of other stuff, whether he said it, he didn't say it, And even when I was a kid, when I was first learning what baseball was, the best cartoon on TV, or one of the best, was Yogi Bear.
Sure.
And then people play Yogi Berra. I'd be confused. There's a little boy, Yogi Bear plays for the Yankees. Yogi Berra, Berra, the whole thing. It
Sure.
had that intrigue to it. And Yogi was even more loved than Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter was loved by Yankee fans, but once in a while, someone would say a little snippet about Derek, fair or not. Yogi, no one ever said anything bad about him. I mean, everyone loved Yogi Berra. Oh, yesterday. Oh, yeah. This settles the argument why Yogi is ahead of Derek. What happened yesterday? During the Miami Marlin game, Don Mattingly wore face mask. Okay, they all have to. It said number 8 on it, Yogi Berra's number. And the announcer said the reason he wore it was in tribute to Yogi Berra, because Don Mattingly said in all his years in baseball, Yogi Berra was the best man he ever came upon.
And you know something? And why I would say that Derek Jeter would say the same thing, and that's why he was such a great Yankee. And I'm not talking about. Listen, Babe Ruth had off-field problems. Iron Horse did. Mickey Mantle had off-field problems. Joe DiMaggio, he was in the spotlight all the time. Derek Jeter seemed to come away from that. He seemed to stay out of the media. He just played baseball. I mean, I love Yogi Berra. Don't get me wrong, Jack. I mean, I remember him jumping on the pitcher, the pitcher holding him up. I mean, he was such a short guy and stuff. And I mean, Yogi Berra was great. And I agree with you with the Yogi Bear thing. I mean, I grew up Yogi Bear. I knew who he was right off the rip. So, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think that I don't know Yogi as well as I know Derek. But I'll tell you right now, to me, Derek Jeter was the ultimate professional. He was the captain of the Yankees, and he deserved to be the captain of the Yankees. Not only his on-field player,
oh yeah, absolutely.
But the way he was off-field, you never heard Derek Jeter out drinking in the club. You never heard him getting in fights. You never heard that about Derek Jeter.
Listen, you never heard it about Yogi. You know what Sparky Lawler said about Yogi?
Go ahead.
That Yogi was so cheap, he wouldn't spend a nickel to take a crap if his life depended on it. That's great. Conservative, come on.
Right, and that's, I mean, great points and a
We
great.
got the Yogi Berra Museum too.
I'm glad. I'm glad you brought up this topic because I agree with you. Yogi Berra is right there. I think Derek Jeter may have a little bit of an edge, but if anybody, I would definitely go with Yogi after Derek. I mean, unbelievable catcher.
Look,
Great off the
number
field.
5 and 6, whichever way you want to flip them. Mix number 4, DiMaggio, Gehrig a 2-3, however you want to flip them, and Babe has to be the most iconic Yankee.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, and then you could talk about Whitey Ford, Mariano Rivera,
right,
and maybe a couple other names that escape me.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, I mean, I think there's a lot of Yankees and different reasons why they were so great and so popular. I mean, listen, as I said before, Babe Ruth changed the game a bit. I mean, if you're going to say anything about it, Babe Ruth is probably the most impactful to me sports figure in the history of all sports.
Everyone knows Babe Ruth, even if they're not baseball fans. Chances are they've heard of him. And that,
right. I mean, unbelievable. So that's it for today's show, folks. Tomorrow is going to be our Sunday football show. We'll have on some great guests for you. Anthony Servino, a fantasy expert. We're scheduled to have David Bierman, who's great at betting against the odds. He's going to come in and give us his 3 top picks. We also got Joe Soloquinto. Santaloquito. Sorry, I'm going to get it right.
Joe has been insulted enough times in his life.
No, let me say it. Let me say it, Jack. Joe Santaloquinto will be on. Laquito will be on
I
tomorrow.
I got to tell you a legendary story about Joe, and we have
and we'll talk about that tomorrow. When we introduce him. He wrote some great articles. He's with the Philly Voice. He made a great article about Wentz and hopefully he'll talk about that with us. But he studies the Philadelphia Eagles. He's an all Philly sport, but we'll have him on Sunday to talk about the Eagles. So, guys, thanks for coming in and watching us today. It was fun doing a debate show with you again, Jack. We do this every Saturday, 8 to 10. Tomorrow we'll be on 8 to 10. You can watch us on at MacMan62, which brings you to Mac Sports. You can watch us on YouTube Live. You can watch us on Twitch Live, Twitter Live. So join us again tomorrow for our football show. That's it. Thanks a lot, folks. Jack, you have a great day, and hope to see you tomorrow.
You hope to see me. You will see me tomorrow.
You never know. I may not be here. You don't know what's going to happen, Jack. I'm just you never know.
Show. I mean, we've gotten canceled. They pulled the plug on our show.
Right. So that's right. So we'll see you all tomorrow, 8 o'clock Sunday.